Thanksgiving was never subtle at my sister's house. Not since the first year she inherited the big old place from my grandmother and decided the holiday should look like a magazine spread. The kind with heirloom turkeys and name cards in gilded holders and a table just long enough for everyone to see each other but not quite close enough to hear sincerity. I hadn't planned to go this year, but my sister, Kendra, had a way of making her invitations feel like obligations wrapped in silk. "Helen, it'll be so nice to have you here, everyone misses you," she said over the phone, voice saccharine as store-bought pie. Kendra, ever the golden child. Always perfectly dressed, children who called her ma'am in public, a husband who wore his tie even on weekends. I dressed carefully, knowing the code: clean, neutral, nothing to set off her "Are you feeling okay?" radar. When I arrived, the house already smelled like cinnamon and stress. The table was filled with family. My parents at the head, our distant Aunt Carol with her camera, and Kendra's 2 kids, seated at the table like small spoiled sovereigns. The air was heavy with history, the same jokes about my artist's career, the usual sideways glances at my thrift store bag or worn-in shoes, Aunt Carol's click-click of the camera as if documentation alone could polish the cracks from the family tree. I took my seat, 3 forks and 2 knives to my right. Kendra always insisted on proper settings, as if etiquette might protect her from chaos. Her youngest, Tommy, had the attention span of a firecracker. He bounced in his chair, glancing between me and his mother with a smirk too practiced for a 9-year-old. I tried to make small talk, but the questions from the adults slid right to the holidays I'd missed, the boyfriends I'd not brought, the job I still cobbled together from freelance contracts. My father nodded absent, my mother pinched her lips but smiled at the camera, and Kendra kept passing me bowls without ever meeting my eyes. The meal stretched, laughter careful and conversations arranged around the fault lines only I seemed to notice. When dessert was announced, I was collecting empty plates as I always did. I never minded. Busy hands kept me from boredom. As I leaned over to clear a glass, Tommy suddenly raised his voice, shrill, delighted. "Careful! Mom says the help shouldn't drop anything." The words crashed over the table. For a moment the room seemed to freeze in static. My mother's fork clattered, Aunt Carol's camera dropped, and an echo of embarrassed giggles jittered from the cousin's end. My cheeks burned with something older than anger. Humiliation, betrayal, the sick familiarity of being branded second class in a house built by my own grandmother. Kendra, for her part, sucked in a breath and barked, "Tommy!" in a tone more anxious for her image than any insult suffered. Instead of backing down, Tommy, still grinning, picked up a fork and lobbed it in my direction, missing me but sending a small greasy streak across the linen. "See, she's used to cleaning," he declared, proud to have an audience. Silence. The punchline was out, the truth naked at the table. I swallowed everything I wanted to say. Rage, sadness, the 1,000 slights filed since childhood. With fingers trembling, I reached for my phone in my apron. In that instant, everything in me lined up. Years of being the helper, the fixer, the one who smoothed every holiday while my sister played the perfect host. I unlocked my phone and typed a single message, my thumb steady as steel. My text was not for Kendra, nor for Tommy, nor the roomful of witnesses who would, by Monday, pretend to remember the story differently. I sent my carefully chosen words directly to my grandmother's lawyer, a person I rarely called, but who had left years ago, a standing offer to let me know if ever the house stopped feeling like hers. I didn't hesitate. I wrote, "Today's the day. I'd like my part of the trust, please." My phone pinged almost instantly. A brisk reply, efficient and empathetic. "Understood. In motion now. You'll need to meet me tomorrow." I pressed my phone face down on the table and looked up into Kendra's startled, pale face. She knew, even before I said anything, that her grip had begun to slip, and that this Thanksgiving, for the first time in our lives, I was done playing the help. The room did not erupt immediately, which somehow made the moment sharper. Families like mine rarely confront cruelty when it happens. They wait to see who has enough power to define it first. My mother recovered before anyone else, lifting her napkin from her lap and smoothing it beside her plate as if the real problem were a wrinkle in the linen. "Tommy," she said, "apologize to your aunt." Tommy crossed his arms. "But Mom really does call her that." Every face turned toward Kendra. Her smile remained in place, but the skin around it had tightened. "He misunderstood a joke," she said. "Children repeat things without context." I looked at her across the table and thought about context. The 7 Thanksgiving mornings I had arrived before sunrise to prepare vegetables while she got dressed. The Christmas Eve when I assembled both children's bicycles after everyone went to bed. The summer I handled repairs after a pipe burst because Kendra said contractors made her anxious. I had organized our father's medications, driven our mother to appointments, balanced the household expenses, and quietly transferred money whenever taxes or maintenance threatened the home. Kendra called it helping because calling it labor might have required gratitude. What was the context? I asked. She blinked, surprised that I had not accepted the exit she had prepared. Helen, don't turn a child's mistake into one of your scenes. That was Kendra's oldest trick. She could strike the match and still accuse me of bringing the fire. My father sighed and reached for his wine. Let's not ruin Thanksgiving over a careless remark. I looked at the fork lying beside my chair, a streak of gravy cooling on the polished floor, and then at the 9-year-old waiting to learn whether humiliating me had consequences. The remark didn't throw itself, I said. Kendra pushed back her chair. He's 9. Exactly. Old enough to repeat what he hears and young enough to believe it's true. Her husband, Mark, finally looked up from his plate. Until then he had maintained the studied neutrality of a man who considered family conflict women's weather. Unpleasant but not his responsibility. Maybe everyone should calm down, he said. Helen, if the cleaning has become too much, we can hire someone next year. Several relatives lowered their eyes. He had confirmed it without realizing he had done so. They did not think I was a guest who happened to help. They thought helping was the price of my chair. I removed the borrowed apron Kendra had tied around my waist when I arrived and folded it carefully on the table. You should, I said. Hire someone, I mean. Fair warning, they'll expect to be paid. Aunt Carol made a nervous sound that almost became a laugh, then covered it with a cough. Kendra's face reddened. After everything I've done to include you, this is how you behave? Include me? I repeated. My name is on the trust that owns this house. The silence changed. Before it had been embarrassed. Now it was attentive. Money has always been the one language my family listens to without interruption. Kendra glanced at my phone and then toward the hallway, where a framed photograph of our grandmother Evelyn hung above the console. Grandma left the house to me, she said, but the confidence had drained from her voice. Grandma gave you the right to live here, I corrected. Those aren't the same thing. My father set down his glass. Helen, whatever you think you're doing, this is not the time. I almost laughed. There had never been a time in our family when I was permitted to state an inconvenient fact. Birthdays were too joyful, funerals too sad, holidays too important, weekdays too busy. My silence was always expected to wait for a better moment that never arrived. You're right, I said. This isn't the time. The time was 3 years ago, when the roof needed replacing and Kendra told the trustee she couldn't cover her share. Or last winter, when the property taxes were late. Or in June, when Mark's business account paid the mortgage on his new SUV, while I paid to replace the furnace in this house. Mark's head snapped toward Kendra. You said your parents covered the furnace. There it was. Another small compartment in the architecture of her lies. Kendra stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. Can I speak to you in the kitchen? No, the word came out quietly, but it carried farther than shouting would have. You've spoken about me in rooms where I wasn't present for years. We can speak here. My mother pressed 2 fingers to her temple. Your sister has children. She needed stability. And I didn't? I asked. Or did you assume I could keep repairing everyone else's stability, because I didn't have children watching? No one answered. Tommy had stopped smiling. He looked from his mother to me, beginning to understand that the phrase he had thrown like a toy belonged to a much larger machine. I did not blame him for building it. Children inherit the maps adults draw. But I would not let him grow up believing that kindness made someone lower than the people receiving it. I picked up the fork from the floor and placed it beside Kendra's plate. When someone serves you, I told him, keeping my voice gentle, you thank them. You never throw things at them. And you don't decide a person's worth by what they do for you. He looked at his mother before muttering, sorry. It was imperfect and reluctant, but it was more accountability than any adult at that table had offered. I nodded. Thank you. Then my phone rang. The name on the screen was Martin Hale, my grandmother's attorney. I answered without leaving the table. "Helen," he said, his voice precise enough that the people nearest me could hear it. I reviewed the trust. "Your withdrawal notice activates the valuation clause. An independent appraisal will be ordered Monday. Once the figure is certified, Mrs. Kendra Bell has 90 days either to purchase your interest or cooperate with the sale of the property." Kendra gripped the back of her chair. "Sale?" she whispered. Martin continued. "There is also the matter of the advances you made for taxes and capital repairs. Those appear reimbursable before distribution. I'll have exact figures tomorrow." "Thank you," I said. "Please proceed." When I ended the call, my sister stared at me as if I had become a stranger while sitting 3 feet away. "You would sell our home because a child made a joke?" she demanded. "No," I said. "I'm leaving a financial arrangement because an entire family spent years mistaking my generosity for employment. The fork just gave your arrangement a name." My father rose then, deploying the voice that had ended every disagreement of my childhood. "You will call that lawyer back." I picked up my coat. "You don't give me orders anymore." My mother followed me into the hallway, whispering urgently that Kendra could never afford to buy out my share, that moving would devastate the children, that my grandmother had wanted this house kept in the family. I paused beneath Evelyn's photograph. "Grandma wanted it kept by people who respected what it cost to maintain," I said. "That's why she put half in my name." Behind us, Kendra began to cry, loud enough for the dining room, accusing me of jealousy and cruelty. 5 years earlier, those tears would have turned me around. That night, I opened the front door. Cold air moved across my face, clean and bracing. I had almost reached my car when another message arrived from Martin. "One more issue. The trust ledger shows withdrawals authorized with your electronic signature. Did you approve $84,600 in distributions to Kendra over the last 2 years?" I stopped beneath the porch light and read it again. Then I typed the only truthful answer I had. "No. I approved none of them." Inside the house, the family was still arguing over the consequence they could see. None of them yet understood that the house might be the smallest thing my sister was about to lose. The night felt longer than any winter I remembered. The drive home, a quiet corridor of orange streetlights and memories that shimmered at the edge of exhaustion. At a red light, I scrolled back through every old group chat, every, "Can you help?" ping, every thankless task I'd performed to prove I belonged. Not only at Kendra's table, but in the family itself. My phone vibrated twice more before I reached my building. First, my mother. "This is an overreaction, Helen. She's your sister. You two will apologize tomorrow, and we'll all move on." Second, a text from Dad, terse and angry. "If you proceed with this sale, you're no daughter of mine." The urge to reply with a lifetime's worth of disappointment sat on my tongue, but I only muted his number and turned the key in my apartment door. Inside, I left my coat on the chair, shoes kicked off, heart somewhere between relief and mourning. I microwaved supermarket stuffing and ate alone in the blue TV light, wondering how many Thanksgivings I had wasted making room for other people's comfort. When I called Martin back to confirm the forensic audit, his tone was brisk but not unsympathetic. "If Kendra forged your digital signature, she's not just violating trust law, there are criminal implications." My hands trembled, not from fear but from anger so old it felt almost foreign. "Don't go lightly," I said. "I'll sign whatever you require." I stared at the ceiling until dawn, brain racing with every time generosity had cost me more than money. The spa gift cards I'd given her kids, the time I spent painting bedrooms and listening to confessions no one else stayed still enough to hear. I answered no texts, and when a third message arrived, this time from Kendra, "Please, Helen, don't ruin what Grandma built," I replied more honestly than I ever had in my life. "You ruined it the first time you lied about me, not today." By mid-morning, the story had broken open wider. I fielded a call from Cousin Meredith, who told me guiltily that my mother and aunt were panicking about the house, that maybe things went too far. Another from my father, truly shaken now. "We just didn't think you had it in you. All those years worried I wasn't strong enough," when in truth I'd simply run out of patience for being the family good girl. Around noon, Martin's assistant emailed me an invoice and scan trail. 12 withdrawals in Kendra's handwriting, all digitally routed through my old email without my consent. Enough money to pay her credit cards, school tuition, even a trip to Disney for her family last year. When she claimed she couldn't afford gifts for mom and dad, something inside me snapped. I forwarded the scans to my own attorney and then, without drama, blocked every family number except my lawyer's. I turned off my phone, turned up the radio, and decided that for once all the noise would have to continue without me. That weekend I cooked a small meal for myself. No feast, no ritual, just quiet, and set a single place at the table. As I ate, I thought about what it means to be the help. The way real work is done without apology, the way pride comes not from serving, but from refusing to be degraded for it. My family had believed for years I would tolerate anything for another seat at the table. They'd never imagined the folding chair I was really saving was for my own peace. Monday opened with a formal letter on my email, subject line, trust appraisal and audit initiated, and a second, more personal call from Martin. They're scrambling, he said, his tone both businesslike and gentler than usual. And so are their lawyers. I've already scheduled the appraisal. You'll have preliminary numbers in a week. My lawyer called to confirm that digital forgery is a felony in our state and explained what it would mean for Kendra. A lost share, possible restitution, maybe more if it went to court. For a moment I felt dizzy. Not with victory, but with the sense that there is no joy in unraveling a family, only the clean pain of setting boundaries where kindness was never returned. Throughout the day my phone buzzed with new numbers, blocked, ignored, irrelevant now. The relief was not the crescendo I had imagined but a gentler quiet. An exhale that had waited 30 years to form. At work, I declined every sympathetic invitation, intent on simply doing my job, free of the family shadow for the first November I could remember. At lunch I sat alone in the little break room and stared out over the city. Up here nobody knew my history, nobody cared about inherited drama. My mind kept turning over the Thanksgiving scene again and again. Tommy's words, the thrown fork, the way the table crackled with the electricity of truth at last crossing the old line no one dared name. I pictured my sister pacing her kitchen, trying to rewrite the story and finding no one left to listen. That evening, Martin sent a scan of the appraisal notice, and my lawyer confirmed I had every right to force a sale or demand my buyout in full. No negotiation, no more waiting for convenience. And then a new message. Kendra, desperate now, voice trembling on my voicemail, finally admitting, I shouldn't have. I just thought you'd never really leave for good. I thought you needed us. There was no venom left in me to reply. Not anger, not kindness, not even revenge. Just the exhausted feeling that comes from ending a pattern old as childhood itself. For the first time in years I began to imagine Thanksgiving somewhere else. Maybe on my own balcony, maybe with friends who knew how to pass gratitude without price. The world outside was cold, but it was honest. I realized as I read the final legal documents before bed that the greatest inheritance a person can gain is simply the power to walk away, with dignity, from any table that has always treated your generosity as an open invitation for abuse. I drafted my last email for the week. Accept the appraiser's value or buy me out. No further discussion. I sent it. Then I switched off every screen and fell asleep, finally, with my own story as my only companion. The week that followed moved with a strange weight. The old ache in my chest was replaced by a stiffer resolve as the days shuffled forward, paperwork moving me closer to an ending I had always thought would be collapse but now felt more like a clean, irrevocable escape. Each morning the inbox held something new, forms to sign, digital dockets, updates from Martin, checklists sent by my lawyer. My supervisor stopped by twice to ask if everything was all right. I nodded, assuring him it was just family business, careful to keep my voice steady. In truth, I was tired. So tired that even the small satisfactory things in life like making coffee, fielding emails, watering the stubborn spider plant by my window, felt hard-earned, like steps up a steep hill. On Tuesday, Martin sent a formal summary. The trust's ledger, Kendra's advances, every dollar I'd poured into the house, and the new appraised value, a number higher than expected, and one I could never have amassed for myself but now, at last, meant more possibility than pain. I opened the attachment, stared at the numbers and wasn't sad. For once, counting up what I was owed felt less like bitterness or pettiness and more like closure. That evening I allowed myself a small pleasure. I ordered takeout, poured wine into the crystal glass Kendra once called too delicate for your place, and ate on the sofa with my favorite blanket. Lights low as dusk socked the city in deep blue. Friends who knew only the most public outlines of my story texted, checking in, some offering bland comfort, others ready to celebrate what they called my long overdue win. But I didn't reply, not yet. Processing grief for what you never really had, I realized, is lonelier than mourning a tangible loss, because you are always sifting echoes, never bones. By Wednesday, the news had spread across family chat. A cousin messaged, "Are you really making her sell?" Followed by a silent, "I'm on your side, but just wish it hadn't come to this." I muted the conversation, unable to carry anybody else's weight even for politeness. All the while, Kendra tried every strategy. She texted apologies, then blame, then nostalgia. "Remember when we used to play tag after dinner? And would Grandma really want this?" She sent photos of Tommy holding his soccer trophy, of the girls in matching sweaters near the Christmas tree. I helped set up the first year she moved in. She sent a message, voice low and small, that finally acknowledged, "I always expected you to show up, H. I never realized you'd actually leave if I pushed too far." I closed my phone and set it face down, letting the ache pass through me. Sometimes the people who take from you the most also expect you'll never stop offering yourself for teardown. Sometimes what feels like family is just a debt someone else assigned. At night I tried to sleep, but the house haunted my dreams. The sound of laughter that wasn't mine, the echo of doors opening and closing, glances over shouldered smiles, wine spilled and wiped without thank you. But each morning now I woke less uncertain, my core steadier, stubborn in the face of regret. On Friday, Martin called again. The valuation was certified, the numbers binding. Kendra would have 90 days to buy my share or the house would go to market, and all advances I'd made, every dollar for taxes, repairs, even porch paint and replaced gutters, would be reimbursed before any profit touched her hands. The legal language was precise, merciless in its logic, stripping away sentiment until all that was left was fairness. Something my family had always feared more than drama. That afternoon, my mother arrived unannounced at my door. Her knock was soft, as if hoping for patience in the dusk. She held a tin of gingerbread cookies, smile tight around the eyes. "You can't really want to lose the house," she said, not sitting, peering around my clean, simple apartment like a stranger counting dust motes in sunlight. "You always said you loved it there." I poured her tea, silent, letting her fill the room with old memories. She told me she was sorry for letting things get out of hand, for letting your sister's habits become your burdens, for not knowing how to step in. As she talked, something unlocked in my gut, the realization that this apology wasn't enough, but I was no longer starved for it. When she finally noticed the box of legal papers on my table, she went quiet. "What do you want, Helen?" I traced the edge of a notarized signature, thinking not about dollar amounts or square footage, but about all the Thanksgivings where help was my title, not my request. "I want peace," I answered quietly, "and I want to never again ask permission to be respected." The room hung silent between us, heavy with all she wished didn't have to change. My mother left before sunset, her tin of cookies untouched, her goodbye careful, as if the rug was slipping out from under centuries of family dance. That night, for the first time in my adult life, I slept with the doors locked and no one else's voice in my head, and dreamed quietly of a table set for one, where every seat belonged to someone who knew the cost of kindness.